Go ahead. Okay.
I didn't have enough time to do everything after the.
Okay. Yeah. Stephanie Hefner,
Yes.
got it. Nice to meet you, Stephanie.
nice to
Mayor
meet you.
Scholl.
So can you hear us?
Is Jessica?
Yes.
on board too?
Yes, I'm here and we can hear you.
Jessica, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I've got audio and video.
Because it's because of that.
Have you got me?
Doug, I can hear you. I don't think that they can hear us though.
Yeah, okay.
It's something wrong with the live stream from City.
Can you give us a thumbs up if you can hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear us?
There's your head now.
And do you have us on
Doug say
video?
No.
How do you know that Jake said no?
He went no.
Oh, he couldn't speak, but
No,
me.
he's speaking, we can't hear. And I think it's because of whatever that setup is over there. Because we don't hardly ever use that for.
Yeah, but Doug, shake your head yes if you can hear us.
Yes.
So we're right now, Doug, we're trying to figure out how we can get you to tune in, but you are watching and are able to gather the information, correct?
Yeah, yes. Can you hear Jessica?
You shake his head yes. Oh, shake your head yes if you heard that.
Yes.
Okay,
What's the deal?
Okay.
so anybody watching will be able to, they just won't be able to communicate.
Yeah, Doug, they can't hear us.
You know,
So
worst
they
case
just
scenario,
want us
we
to
can
listen.
figure it out, we can move forward.
I got that,
What I'm
Jessica.
trying to-
Thank you.
Yeah, they just want us to listen is what they're
Okay,
saying.
good. All right.
Have that presentation, you can probably go back to your regular.
I didn't get it, so I don't know why I didn't get it.
Check again on your side, make sure that you're unmuted. I know you know how to do this by now.
I'm unmuted.
Yeah.
Is it-
Unmute them, yes, no, unmute them, because you have the ability as the, to allow them to speak. Also. As the host. You can mute anybody at any one time.
Doug, can you say something to see if we can hear you?
Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear them.
Okay,
Can you hear Doug? Can you hear Doug?
it makes it difficult if you have questions for,
You sure
Stephanie.
you sent it to my,
I did. It's pretty large. Did you go maybe to your junk or spam folder? And because it's large, it may take a while to send.
Can you hear Doug?
we don't know that. It could be even Zoom too, hopefully you don't have no problems later in the meeting, 'cause we never had anybody participating to speak, to check it, at a regular session too. or work session. We didn't have nobody that wanted to vote on it, so we didn't. Yeah, we did, Bill.
Yeah.
yeah, we can hear them.
Can you hear me?
And it
Can
could
you
be
hear
because
Doug?
we're plugged in to the podium.
Mhm.
We're not sure if we've done that. Do they, I don't know if they do for plan. Does anybody ever do it for planning commission, Patrick?
Jessica, can you hear me?
You might not have noticed.
Yes, Doug, I can hear you. They just still can't hear us.
Unplug and see if
Okay,
that was
and
on the
I
issue.
have in front of my name a pin that's I've never had before, and on any Zoom meeting, including other boards that I sit on. And this one has a pin in front of my name. Is yours have that?
Windows Doug is
No,
unmuting himself.
I don't.
Right.
You should put that in the chat, Doug. So that Kathy can see it in the chat that you have a pin. That's odd.
I'm just concerned that they can't hear us on YouTube. But I don't know, I can't tell. Can you tell? Somebody log in on YouTube.
Since we're talking about how we're.
There's, you know, if there's always multiple moving parts, it always makes it. tricky. It's when we think we have it understood.
Seems most likely it's podium, that seems like.
Rachel, can you hear us?
I can hear.
Rachel, can you hear me? Yes, no?
Different set of problems.
I can't think you said it so well.
Yes, we can hear you on YouTube.
Okay, YouTube is working, so I think we should just move forward with the meeting. Doug won't be able to, and Jessica won't be able to talk and interact, but with time, we're at 5:38 already. I think we need to call this meeting to order. And we're recording, right? We're good? Okay, I'm gonna call this special session to order. It's Wednesday, September 21st. The time is 5:39 p.m. The discussion of the topic is the Oregon Ethics Commission Training and Council Executive Session. We have Stephanie Hefner with OGEC Training Program Analysis. And I will turn it over to her and have her walk us through our training.
Thank you very much for having me this evening. Like I said, my name is Stephanie Hefner, and I'm with Oregon Government Ethics Commission. And really, at the commission, education is our highest priority. So hopefully today, after we go through all of this information, you walk away with a sense of maybe learning a little bit more about executive session, but also knowing that you can reach out to us to ask for questions and advice, because that's really important to us. For the people on Zoom, I don't know if you can submit questions through the chat. Is that possible if you have one? But I do want to just say that if that's available, someone can interrupt me if someone has a question. So, and you all can feel free to interrupt me. So for those in the room, and I do apologize, it is just for those in the room right now, you should have a little clicker in front of you. I'm going to ask you some questions about ethics law, but to get used to these, I got a couple questions to start with. The first is, chocolate ice cream is better than vanilla ice cream, true or false? So on that little clicker, you can hit the number 1 for true, 2 for false. You'll kind of have to hold it for a second, and it should pop up on the screen that you submitted your answer. I'll give you just a second. I can see got 4 responses so far. Looking good. Okay, there you go. So true. I said chocolate was better. So I get to decide if that is the true response. 67% of you said true. 37% of you said false. I don't know who I'm answering again. My favorite activities are A, outdoor activities, B, watching TV, C, going to performances, D, playing sports, E, making things, or F, attending OGEC training.
Feels like a setup.
I know. I was feeling snarky this morning. Okay, let's see what we're looking at. Ooh, everybody has answered. I like it. Okay, this is our breakdown. Nobody said going to performances or playing sports. I should have put something about Halloween on here. I realized that was my mistake. But look at you all. 33% said attending OGEC training. Okay. Well, thank you for playing along with me. You'll have the chance to answer some questions in just a moment, but a little bit of background about and an introduction to Oregon Government Ethics Commission before we do that. The Oregon Government Ethics Commission was started in 1974. Oregon government ethics laws were passed in 1974 as a way to really reestablish trust in public government. It was a time that it was lacking. And so it was enacted by Oregon voters in 1974. And we have a 9-member volunteer commission that's appointed by the Legislative Assembly and the governor, and then approved by the vote of the Senate. And collectively with our 9 staff, we are charged with enforcing government ethics law. So Oregon Government Ethics Commission's jurisdiction includes Oregon Government Ethics Law as it is contained in ORS Chapter 244. And that revolves around public officials, financial abilities, let's say. So using your official position or office for financial gain or avoiding financial detriment and conflicts of interest fall under this piece here. Lobby regulation law, which is ORS chapter 171, specifically the portion that is in regards to lobbyists and their client employers registering with state and periodically having expenditure reports. And then the last piece is Oregon executive session provisions, ORS chapter 192.660. And this part of, is of public meetings law, but we just have the executive session provisions of public meetings law, nothing else. So that's what we're going to be focusing on today. So hopefully by the end of today, you'll be able to identify your individual responsibilities regarding executive sessions. Be able to select some steps to convene an executive session. And we're also going to review the allowable reasons to enter executive session. So these are our first questions. The first question is, if the discussion topic meets the requirements for being discussed in executive session, the governing body cannot meet in open session to discuss the topic. True or false? Go ahead and enter what you think your answer is. Obviously, these are anonymous. I have no way of knowing who's entered what. I could just tell how many people voted. Okay. So I'm not going to go over the answers. We'll go through the answers as we go through the session, and then we'll have a chance to answer these one more time at the end so that I have something to report to the legislature. The next is checklist for executive session. So this is a two-part question. The first one is, and you can actually select multiple answers for this. You don't have to just do one, but provide public notice of the statutory provisions or provisions for entering executive session. Announce that you are entering executive session pursuant to ORS 192.660 only. Announce that you are entering executive session pursuant to ORS 192.660 and cite the authorization for every topic to be discussed. And D, if you intend to come out of executive session to take final action, announce when the open session will begin. So go ahead and select the ones that you think are true. So the second part of that checklist, we've got instruct members of the public to leave the room, instruct all members of the media to leave the room, tell media what may not be disclosed from executive session, come back into open session to take final action, E, keep minutes or sound, video, or digital recordings of all executive sessions, F, announce final actions taken in executive session during the next open session. Keep one. So again, you can select all the ones that apply. Should let you do multiple responses.
I thought this started when you're reading them, if I think they're true, hit it then. We can't, right? We can't leave it a minute there.
Anytime. Once the slide is up there, it's open. Which is part of the reason I also read them, because I know that there's a whole lot of words up there. Okay, everybody's good. Great. Okay, we're almost done with the questions. The next one is, if the public body will be discussing multiple topics in executive session, A 192.660 needs to be cited. However, no specific reason or statutes need to be announced. B, only one of the topics must be announced before entering executive session. C, all of the topics that will be discussed in executive session must be cited. Or D, topics only need to be cited in the public notice and do not need to be cited again before entering executive session. So this one, there's one correct answer. The next one, true or false, a governing body can make a final decision in executive session. True or false? Very definitive answering going on. Great. Next one, during a meeting, members of a governing body are individually and independently responsible for A, their actions, B, their non-actions, C, both their actions and non-actions, and D, nothing. The governing body is responsible. Okay. I think this is the second to last one. Topics discussed in executive session must be expressly permitted by the statutory provisions and properly cited. The discussion may not cover other topics, even if those topics are related to the topic cited. True or false?
You can give me a little line when I've already answered. Let me
We'll
know.
let you do it again.
Yeah.
That one we were only allowed one choice. Before convening an executive session to consider the employment of an employee, the following prerequisites must be met. A, advertise the vacancy. B, adopt regular hiring procedures. C, provide opportunity for public comment on the officer's employment. Or D, all of the above. Or E, none of the above. Okay,
Indeed.
great. Okay. Okay. So that is the end of the questions for now. Now, the intent behind the provisions of executive session are really to ensure that the decisions of governing bodies are arrived at openly and that the public is aware of the decisions the public bodies. And it receives and the public receives adequate information on how those decisions were reached. The Oregon form of government requires an informed public aware of the deliberations and decisions governing bodies and the information upon which they were made. So the provisions in ORS chapter 192 allow specific limited reasons for which a public body may meet in executive session. Members of a governing body may only address and discuss topics in the executive session if they are permissible under the law in chapter 192.660, even if the additional topics are related to the issue at hand, but you can only talk about the specific topic. So before we dive too deep into the statutes, let's go over some of the definitions of public, some of the definitions that are relevant to what we're discussing today. So the first one is public body. So that's any state, any regional council, city council, county, city, district, or any municipality or public corporation or any agent of those entities, such as a board, a department, commission, council, bureau, committee, subcommittee. Or advisory group. It really an indicator whether an entity is a public body or not is whether it was created by or pursuant, to the state constitution, a statute, administrative rule, an order, an intergovernment agreement, bylaw, or another official act. The things that I just said. Now, a governing body, it means two or more members of the public body who have the authority to make decisions or recommendations to a public body on policy or administration. So, for example, a 7-member city council and a 9-member state advisory board are both governing bodies. And a 3-member committee of a 7-member board is in itself also a governing body. The next is meeting. So a meeting means convening of a governing body for which a quorum is required in order to make a decision or to deliberate toward a decision on a matter. All meetings of a governing body must be open to the public unless public meetings law permits the body to meet in executive session. Otherwise, and that provides an exception. So a meeting does not include any on-site inspections of any projects or programs or the attendance of members of a governing body at any national, regional, or state association to which the public body or the members belong. The next is executive session. So executive session is any meeting or part of a meeting of a governing body which is closed to certain persons. A governing body may hold an executive session consisting entirely of only an executive session. However, they would still need to make sure that they follow the proper noticing requirements, which are the same as those for public meetings. The other piece to this is if you do decide to hold an executive session or a closed session and only executive session, Oregon Government Ethics Commission strongly cautions you because cannot make any final decisions in an executive session. So to make sure that you have a know when your next public meeting will be for when you will be actually voting on anything discussed in the executive session. The next one is decision. So that means any determination, action, vote, or final designation or disposition upon a motion, a proposal. We've got resolution, order, ordinance, or measure. So it's anything that of which a vote of a governing body is required at any meeting which a quorum is present. So now that we've talked about that, let's talk about entering executive session. So the Oregon Department of Justice Attorney General put together a public records and meetings manual for 2019. It's available online. You can also print, well, you can access it on PDF. You can also access the web-based version, or you can pay to print it out. But the really great thing about it is that you can access just the executive session portion, and it does give sample scripts for entering executive session. It gives it also gives a checklist for entering executive session. So it's a really great resource for all governing bodies, and obviously it's a great resource for public meetings as well. So as I mentioned, the AG manual has outlines an executive session checklist. So these are things that a governing body should do in order to enter a executive session properly. So the first is prior to the meeting, the board needs to provide notice, public notice of the meeting, in which the reasons for having the executive session are cited on the notice. And then a copy of that notice needs to be provided to each of the board members or council members, so that they can independently verify that all the information on there is correct. Then at the meeting, you need to announce the reasons that you are entering executive session.
Cite the ORSs.
Yeah, cite the ORSs, the reasons that you're entering executive session. So you have to cite the specific reasons and the statutes, excuse me. If you intend on coming out of executive session to take any final actions, you need to announce when you're gonna come back into open session. You need to specify to any individuals who need to leave the room and who is allowed to stay. And then for members of the media who are allowed to stay, unless there's a very specific exceptions to that rule, but for the most part, members of the media are allowed to stay. You need to announce what items of members of the media are not allowed or permitted to report on during that executive session. And then a reminder that you cannot take any final action in executive session. I'm just saying this over and over again. But no final action can be taken. It'll have to be, you have to wait
Be a
for
public meeting.
public meeting, yeah. And then after the meeting, just, the public body needs to keep records of the executive session, whether that be video, audio recordings, etc., notes. But some record of the executive session should be kept by the public body. That way, if anyone were to file a complaint, there would be a record of what happened. So there is a sample script for entering executive session. So you will see that it says, the purpose of the meeting, and then you cite the ORS specifically. This one calls out the news media, what they're able to report on, and when you will return back into open session. So as I mentioned, and I know that you all have given me nods of agreement, but there is the final decision prohibition, which provides that no final decisions may be made in executive session. Now, we know that sometimes consensus can be, but during the discussion, there can be an informal consensus. Many times council members know what the outcome of the vote is going to be when they hold it in a public session. And that is okay, but the actual final decision and final vote has to happen in open session. So any questions about any of that before I dive on into the permissible purposes of executive session? Yes.
So the notice of executive session, we send we put it on our agendas and send the agendas out. Is that notice enough? Okay. Does the actual subject have to be on there or just the ORS title?
So that's a tricky one. We say that it's supposed to say, so if we go back, let's look at it. It's supposed to say the reason and then the ORS. So real property transactions and then cite the ORS.
Okay.
Yeah. You don't have to give a lot of details for that, but you should be citing the reason.
Okay. And then my last question is, when you say keep records, the minutes can just be summary, like just the subject that was talked about, not like in detail.
So OGEC doesn't have, and this is where things get kind of tricky with government, right? We don't have jurisdiction over public meeting or over public records, and so or record keeping. But you do want to have some kind of record of the meeting so that if a complaint were to be filed against one of the council members, there is something that they have to substantiate that they did the thing that they were supposed to be doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's been an issue. No, I mean, seriously, I think that's, you're stating the subject and she's right with what's required. With the Oregon Ethics Commission, they want a ton of information based on whatever, but she's right, it actually general summary, by the way, so your laws and the way you guys operate are two different. When the findings come, that is true, I said shut up and testified at the last one.
So
Absolutely true.
So there, there's definitely symmetry between public records law and public meetings law. And so, if you need to, as council members, you are responsible if someone were to file a complaint against you, that the council didn't
Documentation.
follow
I get it.
proper procedure, you need the documentation.
I get it.
So that's what I can say on that piece, unfortunately. Can't. I know that is not quite, it's not quite perfect. I'm sorry, that it's not.
So we're gonna document
Really
all
start
everything.
Change how we do
Yep, document tell everything, put it in the file.
recording.
Yep.
I mean, you can also you can do your meetings how you normally do it. and then have an audio recording?
Yes, that's what she just said.
That would,
That's what she just said. We'll do it that way. And then it's put in a safe and there becomes an issue, it's coming out.
so, as I mentioned earlier, executive session can only be held when it's, permitted by a specific provision of ORS chapter, 192.660. Yeah, each prerequisite also needs to be met, before entering executive session. So certain reasons for entering executive session have prerequisites, some do not, but all of those have to be met for the ones that do require it before you can enter. And then the topics discussed in executive session have to be limited to those that are cited. So even if you want to talk about a topic that is adjacent or has something to do with the other topic, you really have to keep the discussion to the reason that you are in executive session, the permissible reason that has been cited. And I know it's human nature, it's hard sometimes to keep our conversations narrow, but that is what the law requires. So let's take a look at some of the reasons, permissible reasons for holding executive session. So the first is for that we'll talk about is for the employment of a public officer, employee, or agent. So this is one of the ones that has prerequisites that you have to meet before you can enter executive session for this. So for this one, the prerequisites are the vacancy has to be advertised. However you normally advertise your job vacancies. Procedures for hiring have to already be adopted. So that's something that can't happen in executive session, but you should already have those procedures in place, or if you're going to make adjustments to those, do so either in open session or however you normally take care of those. And then the public has had a chance to comment on the hiring of public officers. So those are the prerequisites for meeting, for hiring a public officer, employee, or agent. So the governing body may hold an executive session to consider the initial employment of the public officer, employee, or agent, staff member, if the public body has met those prerequisites. And this really only applies to the initial employment of the individual. I'm just double checking my notes to make sure I'm not forgetting anything, because there's so many pieces to all of this. The standards, criteria, and policy directives that are used in hiring, such maybe hiring individuals, must be adopted at a meeting that's open to the public. So if we're talking about like the chief executive officer, that all has to happen, be adopted at a meeting open to the public, at which the public has the opportunity to comment. And this does not apply to the consideration of general employment policies, but again, relates only to the initial hiring of specific individuals. The other thing to note is that salaries should not be being discussed at this stage of employment. And as general practice, salaries shouldn't really be discussed by governing bodies as a best practice. That's all. So the next one is disciplining of public officers and employees. So it is permissible for a governing body to hold an executive session to consider the dismissal or the disciplining of a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent, and may also hear complaints and charges brought against such persons, as long as the individual does not request an open hearing. So when we talk about open hearings, same as public session, those two are used interchangeably. And so in order to permit the affected person to request an open hearing, the person must have sufficient advance notice. And there is what that looks like is outlined in the OAR. So if you ever do need to do this, I do recommend taking a look at the Oregon Administrative Rules to see exactly what the steps are that have to happen in terms of timeline for providing that individual notice. And then the individual has the right to ask for it to be in public session. But though the provisions do require them to have that opportunity, it doesn't mean that they can hold up having the meeting because they want an attorney to be present, or they themselves can't attend at that time, it is not an adversarial hearing, and it's not one that they can necessarily, an attorney can stand up and make comment on, unless that is something that's already part of your policies on how that.
Sure.
Go ahead.
So what you're basically saying is you can have that meeting as long as it's open and it gives them the opportunity to have that open hearing, but you're not held to answering to their attorneys or their process,
Exactly.
because we've had that happen actually.
So, and it can happen in executive session unless that individual requests it to be in public session.
Yes.
So yes, you are not required to.
Exactly.
So the next is for performance evaluations of public officers and employees. And ultimately, this one looks very similar to the previous one in that, again, the individual needs to be given advance notice and has the opportunity to request the meeting happen in open session. But again, they don't have the ability to postpone that open session so that they can have their attorney present or because they can't be there, right? So, but again, the OAR is very specific about that timeline that you do need to let people know in advance that this public meeting or executive session is happening, and give them the opportunity to choose whether or not they would like it to be open. So reasons you cannot convene an executive session is when we're talking about employees is to evaluate agency goals, objectives, operations, or directives. So really it has to be about individual performance. Evaluate any directive given to personnel concerning an agency goal, objective, operation, or program. And conduct or discuss employee performance reviews or discipline without notifying that person being discussed and giving them the option of holding those discussions in an open session. Okay, so the next one is labor negotiators. You may need an executive discussion to meet with your designated labor negotiator. And this is one of the times that media can be excluded from those conversations. I don't know how often labor negotiations come up for you all, but that is one that actually comes up a lot.
Yes.
So yes, and then you can when it comes to labor consultations, if both sides request that deliberation happen in executive session, then it can under this provision. So those are usually happen in the open, but if both sides request that it be in executive session, then those labor consultations between the the two sides, the designees for the two sides.
Yeah.
The next is real property transactions. So this one is to deliberate with designated persons to negotiate real property transactions. And so when we talk about this one, when we're talking about the designated persons, that can be, it could be the mayor, it could be a city administrator, it could be a real estate individual. But this is to have those conversations with that individual in private when you're selling a property, for example, and it doesn't have to be just for selling, but when you're selling a property, for example, you should be able to discuss with the individual that has been designated as your real property negotiator what your bottom number is and what you're shooting for, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you should be able to have those conversations in a closed session, just like anyone else. And so this can also be used for just talking with your designee about leasing sites as well. But it cannot be to talk about But again, this has to be specifically to, the property transactions. So we cannot use this to talk about long-term space needs, what to do with a property. You can't use it to discuss what the optics are going to be around the property transaction. So all of those parts do not fall within this. This is really to hold conversations specifically with that person that is your designee, and it's specifically about the actual transaction of that real estate.
So that can start though with just a conversation sometimes, and sometimes these could take multiple meetings to actually maybe even have direction of where you're going. Correct?
I guess I would need to understand a little bit more about what you're trying to, yes, it can happen in multiple meetings.
I mean,
Definitely.
just an example, Jacob's Bluff was highly contentious. Privately owned, wanted to take this big huge rock bluff down. The city acquired it. The city owns it now. It paid X amount of dollars. Realtor wants to come in and start talking about buying that. They propose to our designated person, to our manager here. He brings it to us in real property executive session. And we're like, well, this doesn't seem right. Maybe we should, the discussion starts. And we haven't reached any agreement, but it doesn't seem right to the census of people. And the direction is no, we choose not to deal with X. Or A. Yes,
So remember, you can't make any final decisions.
exactly.
In executive session.
Yes.
Yes, you can have multiple meetings with your
So,
designee.
so, but what you're saying, like, you're kind of trying to say I came to a decision. I see what you're saying, but no, you're not. You're actually negotiating. Real estate is about money and negotiations and counter offers.
It is.
That is real estate.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so, but you just kind of directed me, kind of slapped me down, like, no, that wasn't, it's not like you were making it, when you're just giving directive to the negotiator, which would be the city manager, and know that, well, that doesn't sound right. And the answer would be, it would be that doesn't sound right. That's just the way real estate works. How else do you do it? Tell me how else you do it.
It allows you to have those you are correct. It
Yeah,
allows.
but tell me how you do it.
You are correct in that it allows you to have those conversations with your negotiator, right?
Mhm.
The person you deem to be your negotiator.
Yes.
I don't need to keep
Yes.
signaling to you over
Yes.
here.
Yeah, it is.
But no, we always have attorneys sitting present on our executive session too, but what I was kind of hearing you say is that's not correct, and I'm thinking, well, how do you go about doing a real property transaction?
Well, again, you're having those conversations, those negotiations with your designated.
There's no contractual agreement.
You're not signing a
Hey,
contract.
that's right, you're just giving direction, and if it doesn't sound right, the price doesn't sound right, you're not gonna even flirt with the idea of a contract.
Correct.
But doesn't that report that there's been public announcement that this property is for sale? Or up to now, we've made no official announcement, this property's up for sale, someone's made us an offer. We're now dickering on what the price is.
So, and I get,
So I do have to be careful because I cannot opine on I cannot
So,
give advice
I don't-
on anything that's already happened.
can I clarify,
But hypotheticals
can I
and-
clarify one thing? I know Ed Trumke looked at this profusely. Urban renewal agencies can negotiate without getting, an appraisal and have the ability to, within the boundaries of those, move forward with Chuck's property. That's what you're referring to, Council Tobes. You can.
No,
look
but
that up.
I would like that answer too.
Yes.
So, and so your question is if the property isn't even for sale yet.
Right.
So, I mean, making a decision whether or not to sell that property is a decision, isn't it not?
But I'm talking, we're now at the point of just dickering about price.
Okay.
But if this piece of property is sitting here in the middle of the city, we have to announce and go through the steps that property is for sale, so anybody could start that.
I beg to differ. If I know that city owns the mill property and I wanna go buy a chunk. and it's not advertised, I'm gonna come up and say, hey, I did a pull the trio, which is to the county, because I can do that for any property within the county on the tax lot. And find out who the owner is and try to approach that owner and see if they want to sell their property.
You
Without-
as an individual have the right to approach.
And as a governing body and working for the citizens, the city manager, if he's notified, should bring that to the council.
That is correct.
Absolutely correct.
Yes.
Yes. So it doesn't have to be advertised, it's approached.
I'm worried about this, the sale. Do I have to tell the public that that property is for sale? Someone's made an offer on it already, or can I just sell it without telling the public?
And the sale would be a final decision whether or not you were going to finalize that sale contract.
Yes.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead. Somebody's come to the city and says, I want to buy this piece of property. That's up to them. Can the city sell that property without telling all of the public that that property is for sale?
Where the issue lies is that you are making a final decision as a council to sell that property. So this provision doesn't allow for every discussion about property to happen. This is just between you and your designated person to negotiate on your behalf. But the decision to actually sell is a final decision,
Should come into a regular meeting.
and that has to come into a regular. meeting.
Okay, now, we also brought the fact we have economic zone. And how do we go about selling property in that?
Urban renewal.
Urban renewal.
Urban renewal, I wanna make sure.
Yes,
Urban rural.
Agency and the parameters around the urban renewal agency.
if we have, typically, we have surplus property, we have to go through a procedure to say it's for sale.
Still a public process, but it requires the same procedures. All I was trying to say, as far as we have to actually get appraisals
Mhm.
on regular property. Urban renewal, we actually have the ability, and that's why urban renewals are there, is for reasons to negotiate and fix the blight. That's what urban renewal was designed for, was to fix blight in your city. And give you the ability and authority to move those properties forward and make it beneficial for not only the city, but the developer or future developers. That's it.
Yeah, I think the salient point here is that there's ORS around executive session statute. There's also ORS around the sale of public properties statute that both apply.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Now, and this one, it says deliberate designated person to negotiate the real property transactions. The decision by the council is to sell the property or to accept that price.
That's a good question. To accept the price.
That I agree is the council, but
Yes.
does the council also have to say that that property is for sale?
The decision, I mean, the whole purpose behind Oregon Public Meetings Law is for the transparency, so people know what their government is doing, right?
Right.
So this specific piece is to deliberate with your negotiator.
Okay, let's stop.
What your prices would be.
Stop. Now that in fact I have a negotiator, doesn't that say that I've accepted the process of selling this property? I've got this negotiator to do it for me.
You know, I don't feel like that I have a clear answer on that. That's gonna clear this up. So what I am happy to do is I'm happy to discuss it with my compliance and education coordinator and get a more clear answer to you on that specific point, because I don't think that I'm gonna be able to.
Because at this point, I have no discussion. It's the point about allowing that piece of property to be sold. The initiation of why to sell it, if somebody offered it to me or offered to buy it. What steps do I have to go for me to sell that public
And I think
property?
that's a very valid question, and like I said, I'm not comfortable, because that is more nuanced. I'm not comfortable giving an answer at this moment, but I would be more than happy to take it back to my compliance and education coordinator, talk to my executive director, and again, Oregon Government Ethics Commission always, if you are ever in that situation, you're like, I don't know if I can do this, you are welcome to reach out to us.
And Stephanie, just so you know that the only truck that we have sold has been in the urban renewal agency as well. too.
Okay.
So that does make a difference. I just want to make that clear, okay?
Well, and I'm not,
We don't-
I'm not
we
in
don't have problems.
compliance at all, so.
Yeah, okay, good.
I am not going, I'm not using that. I am not.
Well, I just want to make it clear that it's directive if somebody thinks that we are not doing things right. That the only property we have sold in the last 6 years has been in the urban renewal agency. Yes.
Pricing a real estate transaction purely about price just oversimplifies the issue so much, because there's
Yeah, it does.
so many other factors
It
about
does.
reward,
Due
partner.
diligence,
long-term
infrastructures, yes, all kinds of
Yes, and like I said, there's a lot of nuances, and I have to admit that I don't
Business.
understand all of them.
business, the tax, the
There you go.
benefit to the community. There's a number of factors.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And so again, that's why when you're faced with those situations, I encourage you to reach out to us. There's people a lot smarter than me to help figure out and provide that
You've
guidance.
done this plenty of times. Are we about halfway?
Yes, we are more than happy.
Oh, good. Just that we have a 7 o'clock that these guys are gonna be ready for, yes. I'm skipping that one. I'm good.
I definitely want to move on, so, but I will come back to you with that answer, after talking with my staff, so. Thank
That's all no, yeah.
So the next one is trade negotiations. So this is to discuss preliminary negotiations involving matters of trade commerce in which a governing body is in competition with governing bodies in other states or nations. So the key piece to this is the other states or nations. So this is to allow you to have some competitiveness, but it doesn't, if say you are in competition with Caboose on something, then this wouldn't apply. This one, people want to use all the time, but it doesn't work. So the next is legal counsel. So executive sessions are appropriate for consultation with your legal counsel, as you know. But for this one to be used, it has to be specifically about either current litigation or potential litigation. This cannot be about litigation that is concluded or happened in the past. And also your legal counsel does have to be present to enter under H. So this one, they do have to be present for this one.
What determines likely? Cause that it's always a future too, but it's been questioned.
What determines likely?
Yes, because actually, the way it is expressed by Susan Myers is that we do not have current litigation going on. And by our attorneys, it could very well be likely the stuff we were discussing in those sessions.
So I understand 100% where you are with this. However, because of the way that the commission is structured, I as a staff member cannot say
Yes.
when a violation has or has not occurred. That is up to our commission, so our 9-member commission to make those determinations. So Susan Myers.
Are they attorneys?
Some are, yes.
Some are.
We have a mixture of attorneys and not. And Susan Myers will present the case to them, and they are the ones that makes those determinations. As staff, we cannot make determinations whether or not a violation of the law has occurred.
How long are those public records held for as far as for them, when I had my meeting last year? And the recording of me testifying, would that still be public record?
It is still public record. It's on our website. I post those.
That's good. Good. So now I got
We use them for multiple years. So.
Yes.
So for us,
How much does it cost to get public record?
that I don't know. I'm not the one that handles those
Right.
requests. But on our website, you can
I guess
look
what it is.
to testimony, you can see our meeting materials, and you can see our agendas. And then once obviously our executive session pieces are confidential until we close executive session. And then once we have the material of ready, processed and ready to post, we try to do that by the latest the Monday after executive session, but usually sometime that week after, we'll post it to the website. So then it becomes public record.
Sure.
That's how
Okay.
ours operates. So your
Yeah, so, but we all still get it.
so the key to this one is your legal representation does need to be present.
Right, great. And in that section, this handout you gave us talks about in person or by telephone and this or other concurrent means of communication on it. Question whether that like a legal memorandum submitted would be.
No.
No.
So that this would be more, that's more to allow for changing technologies such as Zoom or, Teams or other online type medium. So if you were to do a memorandum, there is a way to discuss that. And I'm glad you brought that up. And I know that we are very close on time, but we're almost done. So that would fall under what is exempt, public records that are exempt by law from public session. So if your attorney were to write a memorandum that was part of attorney-client privilege, you could then enter executive session to review that memorandum from your attorney.
Does the attorney have to be present?
No, for this one, the attorney does not have to be present, but there does have to be a actual actually in writing. There needs to be there needs to be a record that is being reviewed.
That's funny.
So no, so this one the attorney would not be present. This is if they were to write a memorandum for you. And that is what is being discussed. Does that help?
Yeah, that helps a lot. Thank you.
Okay, yeah.
And I was hoping you would kind of take it there. So.
No, it's very, very good question. So the only other one we didn't really talk about was public investments. And so it can be called to carry on negotiations with private individuals or businesses regarding proposed acquisitions, exchange of or liquidation of assets for public investments. Okay, so any questions on those pieces? So very quickly, in terms of media representation, there's very limited reasons that media are exempt from attending executive session. If you are meeting with your labor negotiator, you can have them, you don't have to include them. If you're discussing the expulsion of a secondary or elementary school student, that is another reason, and students' confidential medical records. The other one that's not, oh, I did put it in here. The other one is if the individual either works for or is party to litigation that you have against that media entity, and you were meeting with your legal counsel about that litigation,
Yeah, that would be.
then you can exempt
Sure.
them. Or they don't, you don't have to allow that media individual into it. Yes. So then just in terms of responsibility, again, you're individually responsible for any actions and non-actions as a council member, and any fines are going to be issued to you individually. So if you see something is not right, it's your responsibility to stand up and say something. And then I know this can feel very counterintuitive, but if it continues, the conversation continues to go off track and it's not going back on, then you need to stand up and state for the record that you're leaving the meeting because it is not in compliance with the executive session provisions, or you don't believe it to be, and then leave the room. So that is just sitting there quietly is being, your non-action is including you as an active. But, that is the recommendation. Okay. So I just skipped this to this, so, what to do if the session is off topic, you're gonna state that objection, to the discussion, and then announce on the record that you're leaving the session, and then actually leave the room. So in the interest of time, I'm not gonna ask you those questions that we asked at the beginning. I feel like unless you really want to go through them again, so I know the school teacher. We can go through the answers really quick. So if the discussion on the topic meets the requirements for being discussed in executive session, the governing body cannot meet an open session to discuss the topic. This one is false, right? Because it says cannot meet. You would of course choose to meet an open session. For the checklist, you need to provide public notice of the statutory provisions for entering executive session. This one, the tricky part was, it doesn't have the, yeah, okay. Announce that you're entering it pursuant to 192.660 and announce it for every topic. If you come out of executive session to take final action, announce when it will begin. The next one is instruct members of the public to leave the room, tell media what may not be disclosed, come back into open session to take final action, and keep minutes, sound, video, digital recordings if they get active session. And this is an or, right? Like just something. And then the reason that this one is you're not taking final action, right? So that was the tricky one there. Governing body can make a final decision in executive session. False. You all were shaking your heads when we talked about that, so I feel pretty good. If the public body will be discussing multiple topics in executive session, all of the topics need to be cited. I drilled that one down. What can I say? Topics discussed in executive session must be expressly permitted by the statutory provisions and properly cited. The discussion may not cover other topics, even if they're related to the topic cited. That is true. During a meeting, members of the governing body are individually and independently responsible for both their actions and their non-actions.
Non-action.
Just sitting there not doing anything.
If you think that is wrong.
That was the question.
If you're in the room and you're not doing anything, that would be a non-action.
Okay, as I say, to me, non-action has a couple other meanings too.
That's valid.
It's, the thing is, if you keep silent and don't tell the truth and lies being spoken,
Mhm.
basically you're lying. It's that.
Yes, it's that premise. You got it. Before convening an executive session to consider the employment of an employee, the following prerequisites have to be met. You do have to advertise. Oops, that one didn't come up. I apologize. You do have to advertise. You have to make sure that you've adopted any regular hiring procedures at an open meeting. Open meeting, provide opportunity for the public to comment on the officer's appointment. So those are the ones. In terms of the complaint process, do you want me to go over the complaint process very quickly? That's good for you. Okay, so anyone can submit a complaint to the Oregon Government Ethics Commission, alleging that a violation may have occurred. We cannot accept any anonymous complaints. They all have to be signed. Once we get them, we review them, and the first litmus test is it within our jurisdiction? And if it is, then we open it. And so without it, it moves to preliminary review phase. And so in that, our investigators are gathering information to present to the commission, who are really deciding whether or not that there's any evidence that a violation may have occurred, right? So in this first one, they're just saying, should we investigate this further? We have 60 days to complete this, and then the commission decides. We have 180 days to complete the investigation phase. If you are found in violation, you have 4 options. You can pay any fines assessed. You can work with the staff on a stipulated final order, which is, usually a lesser fine. You can appeal, or you can choose to ignore it, though there are other consequences of that. But those are all options. At every step of the way, we let you know, what the decision was and what the next steps were. And that, when it comes down to the sanction piece, for a civil penalty, there's a $5,000 maximum. For willful violation, it's 10,000. Forfeiture is twice the amount of any financial benefit that was realized. But most often, and it really depends on what, we have a matrix, a scoring chart, right? But it depends on what the violation was, how many there have been, but often we, some kind of letter of education, is the most common, thing, sometimes a small fine. However, if you work with staff, attend trainings, there's negotiation in there. Which brings me to staff advice. So staff advice, they have different levels of staff advice, and each level comes with a different level of safe harbor protection. So if a complaint were filed against you and you followed the advice that you were given by the commission, when they're looking at that complaint, would then have to take your actions into account and the advice that you were given. So if you were given bad advice to us, and you followed it perfectly, that is going to be taken into account. So staff advice we do informal staff advice, emails, letters from executive director. We have then more formal staff opinions and then committee advisory opinions. So they all kind of take more time this way. They offer more protection this way.
It's just really frustrating to me because the state. It's ongoing, but you're not part of the committee, right?
I'm not on the,
Okay, good.
yeah.
But we're represented by two attorneys who say, go, yes, you have every right, two, not one, two. In that meeting and said it just absolutely meets, and they explained it very clearly. And now there's an open investigation amongst this council. Very, very frustrating. I am not an attorney. I was referred by them, and that letters were written, and that they're still. It's beyond me. It's really beyond me. Really beyond me. That's why I asked, is there attorneys on this 9-person committee? And it seems like we always end up with Susan.
Susan.
2 times in a row now.
Susan is not our, so Susan does not serve on our commission. She's actually our education and compliance coordinator. So she is also an investigator.
Yes.
So she is the one that presents
You.
to our commission, which is our 9 volunteer
Yep.
member commission, which is, again, they're appointed by the Senate, the Legislative Assembly and the governor, and then approved by the
I absolutely get that, but
and there are lawyers and yes, you have opportunity to state what you want. I understand why you're frustrated. Beyond that,
well, I don't really want to say nothing. My attorneys are representing. I mean, that's us, yeah.
But beyond that, I can't really.
Is he able to, oh,
I think
you
we
typed in?
fixed it, though.
Okay. That's a question. Doug, can you speak or do you want to type it?
Oh, I'm trying to unmute.
There you go.
Okay, I'm fine. I just wanted to comment that I've got 15, it's 6:45. I'm going to go off virtual and then I'm coming down to city council right now. So I'll be there in 5 minutes.
Oh, excellent. We're just wrapping up, Doug. Thank you.
Okay. I know. I'm with you.
Yeah, I know you've been listening.
So I want to thank you all for attending. I really appreciate it. Again, if you have questions and concerns, please don't hesitate to contact the staff, especially if something's coming up. And again, I will follow up with the staff regarding your question, Counsel.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you very
Yes.
much.
That was very informative. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
doesn't hurt.
We have plenty of time to.
I learned lots.
Yeah.
Oh, with that, we're adjourned. Kathy's like, hey, get out of here.
Very.
Call this meeting to order. Our council regular session, Wednesday, September 21st, and it's 7 p.m. I'd like to have the participants up here introduce themselves, starting all the way down to the end.
Mohammed Zahir, Public Works Director. David Green, Jake Christian, City Planner.
Sharon Durrell, Engineering Manager.
HR coordinator / city recorder.
Lisa Scholl, Deputy City Recorder.
Councilman Stephen Topaz.
Doug Morton, I'm council president, and I'll preside over the meeting.
John Walsh, City Administrator.
Councilwoman Jessica Sheldon.
Counselor Patrick Berkeley.
Thank you. And Mayor Scholl could not be here tonight. Actually, he deferred from being on the deliberations of one of our agenda items. Jessica?
Will you all please rise and join me in the flag salute? I
Thank you, Jessica. Visitor comments. Tonight, we'd like to invite everyone to state your name and hold your testimony to 3 minutes or less.
My name's Richard Mason. I'm here and I'm confident that council is going to approve the contract tonight with the, in regards to the marina doing the harbor master duties. The one thing that I need to reiterate is that all the work that us as the committee did will be for naught if it's not enforced. You all recall back in, I believe it was 2018, when the marina took on the duties of what is now the St. Helens or the Sand Island campground. The city, Brad agreed that he would police the docks, both at the island and also the city docks. Between him and Tony, they kept well-documented records of violators and abandoned boats, and time after time, the city wouldn't back them up. There was either no resources. The police department said they didn't have anybody that was trained to go down there and be on the docks. So I hope that this new contract, I just hope that the city backs them up, because I don't want to see what has happened in the past. And that I know that the ordinances are written in a way that there's more teeth in them, but they still have to have the city behind them. So that needs to happen. That's all I gotta say.
Thank you, Rich. Any further visitor comments?
Yes, my name is David Green, and I don't know who I bring this to, but you.
So I live on Clark Street and it's a very dangerous intersection. I've actually I've lived there for several years, over 20, and I've not brought it here before. But I've actually had a wreck there at that exact intersection. And yesterday I was almost hit again by a car. And this time it was a school bus. And that sort of kind of prompted me to think something needs to be done. When you pull out of the driveway, you cannot see. Park Street is the road right after you pass the Milton Creek Bridge. And you cannot see down the road at all. I mean, you just can't. There's a bush there. Typically, the person that lives in that house parks his truck there. You literally cannot see. I mean, I missed bus. I came from inches of being hit by a school bus. And I know there are some people that would probably be happy about that, but it would also affect the school bus people and, children on the school bus. And I think it's private property that the hedge is on. So I don't know that it's a city issue that you can do something with, make him cut his hedge down. But it's a very dangerous intersection and something needs to be done about it.
Is there a sidewalk there on the street?
There's not. There's no sidewalk there.
And what about the setbacks? You don't know if it's private property or.
I'm pretty sure that the hedge is on, and I don't blame the guy, is on his private property, and I don't blame him for not, wanting to have a hedge because of where he is, because he's right there. But on the other hand, literally, I mean, it is not, you have to pull into the intersection. In fact, I did take some photos. I don't know if you can have a way to see them, but you literally, to be able to see down the road, your car has to be 60% into the road before you can see the head down there to see. And so by the time you were to actually get to the point where you could look down, you would have already had a collision. And it's a dangerous intersection. There are several people that live down that road. And literally, I mean, and my fear is that, and I don't know if anyone here knows this, but my fear is that with the development at Walmart, that road is going to go through to that development, which is going to increase the traffic exponentially shortly. That road is going to go through. So right now, there's bad enough traffic on it. But if that road goes through to the new development with 296 new apartments and probably 300 people at least, it's going to get worse. And so something needs to be done. I don't know, a few years ago, there used to be a pole with a mirror on it. And I don't know what happened to it. I don't know who put it up, if the city did, but someday that just disappeared. And like I said, I've already had one wreck there, almost had another one with the school bus.
Thank you, Brady.
So,
See if we can, who can we get to?
So, yeah, Mr. Graham, I will actually go personally inspect the section tomorrow, take our engineering team, we'll look at it, we'll see if there is anything in the public right of way we can do, a sign, a mirror, look at the existing conditions and.
Well, thank you.
Have you talked to the newsman about it?
I have not.
I
And again-
suggest that too.
And again, I don't blame them. If I lived there, I would want a hedge too, because of where he's at.
Privacy.
Yeah, because it's right on the road. I mean, it's a pretty busy road.
Hindering the site distance,
Yes, it absolutely hinders the sight. You cannot see down the road at all.
there are, of course, ordinance and ways and means where those signs can be specific heights, width. If
Yeah,
that
I don't know if it
violates,
violates those, but
we'll look into that.
all right.
I was
thank you.
gonna look into it, and thank you, sir.
A history lesson.
In the other direction, isn't there the edge of the bridge that you can't see in the opposite direction?
No, in the other direction, because it sits far enough back and there's a little sidewalk before the bridge, that's fine. But from the left,
Yeah, I know that it's back, there's no doubt about that.
yeah, you cannot.
It doesn't give you a whole lot of vision.
It doesn't give you a whole lot, but it's enough. You can see, you can't see to the end of the road, but you can see far enough past the road that it's. Plus, if you're going left, going that direction, they're in the other direction anyhow, so it's not as critical, but on the right, it's bad.
Okay, we got it covered, staff?
Yes.
Yeah, so if we go back a couple of police chiefs ago, when Chief Salee was here, this issue came up. And we staff checked with legal counsel, and in the development code, we have vision clearance standards for new development. And what they did back then was put those standards in, I think, the nuisance section. So it could be enforced by code enforcement or the police.
Yeah, and again, I don't even know if I'd make the poor guy cut his head, but maybe you'll, like I said, there used to be a mirror. Because again, I don't blame him, but it really is an accident waiting now.
Did that mirror help when I was there?
It did help, because you could look at the mirror and you could see the traffic. And I don't know if the city did it or if just a neighbor did it. It disappeared.
The hedge is partially in the right of way, not all of it though. Looking at that.
We'll bet it.
All right,
Thank you, Ray.
okay, thank you.
Any other visitor comments? Okay, let's go down to item number 1 on the agenda. Appeal of Planning Commission's denial of 46-foot lot plan development, 46 lot plan development subdivision. Preliminary plat located southeast of the intersection of Pittsburgh Road and Meadowview Drive. Jacob, our city planner, let's put you on the spot and you can help us out with this. You want to do the introduction?
Sure, yeah. So this is a continuation of deliberations from your last meeting in August. We got to cover some stuff since some time has passed. The first one is, would anybody like to declare any ex parte contact that may have happened since the last meeting?
Yes, this morning, while I was teaching, I received a phone call and the voice message left by Vicky Nuss. And to talk about basically building moratoriums. I think that was the main topic of the call. There was some reference to the Comstock property, but there was mainly some comments about city moratorium. I don't believe that the content of the phone call or anything has any impact on my ability to look at the record that has already been received to make a decision.
I had a similar call this morning. And so what I told the caller is that I would check in with the city planner to make certain that I'm up to date on this issue. And I'll try to make the best decision that I possibly can based on the information we have. That was my comment to the, pretty much my comment to the visitor. But I heard at length an issue about a moratorium. So.
Appreciate that.
My answer machine got the same thing. Fortunately, I wasn't there.
Fortunately.
Sometimes that can do more damage than it can do good.
Well, I was told by Jacob I could call you guys.
No, I understand.
Issue. So.
Apparently you didn't have
Especially
my
with planning
phone.
issues.
Councilor Chilton, you were not here at the previous meeting. So have you reviewed the record, video, so on and so forth? Do you feel that you've read those sufficiently, that you are up to date on the matters?
I do. I had a chance to catch up on everything and also discuss it with you privately before coming in, and I feel like I am ready to make a decision on it.
Okay, thank you. Does any citizen want to object to council to make a fair decision based on any new stuff? Okay, good. So with that stuff out of the way, let's do a quick history lesson on where we got here and talk about some of your options for the decision tonight, possible decision tonight. So first of all, this was a planned development, and so there is an overlay zone, the zoning action, an amendment of the zoning map that has been approved and passed, and that allows some design flexibilities. Both the planning commission and the city council agreed that the minimum lot size should remain at the 7,000 square foot minimum, and then the side setbacks remain as well. So that's all solid and in place. Now, the subdivision itself is a separate action. The planning commission had some concerns about that over the lot size, as well as the sanitary sewer issues, and they denied it. It was appealed to the council, and you heard a whole lot of stuff on October 17th. And it was a lot of new stuff, and the council felt like you wanted more time to digest the new information to be able to make a fair decision. And
Correction, you said October 17th was when we.
August 17th.
Oh.
August.
Did I say August?
No, you
said October.
I'm sorry. October is in my mind because it's related to the 120-day rule, and we'll get into that stuff. So sorry. August is what I meant. Thank you. And so we've had that time to allow you to consider everything in the record. And one of the significant updates was a revision to the plat. Kathy, if you could show that. So both the old plat and the new plat are in the record. And this slide has them side by side. And one of the concerns was, wow, there's a big change and people haven't had a chance to vet the change. But really the change was the result of the vetting and all the testimony that preceded this revision, which the applicant has attempted to honor. And so an important thing when you're looking at these side by side, the original 46 lot development is to the left, and then the revised one provided on August 17, or around that time period, is on the right. And you can see that the larger areas, and those are the wetland, those are the pieces of property reserved for the wetland, the tracts that we call them. Those are the same. Where the streets are at and their geometry is the same. The only difference is that there's less lots. And if you look at it really close, you can see that. And I'll help point this out. So for example, down here, you have 4 right there and there's 6 here. And so if you look closely, you can see where some of those differences are at. And it's simply less lots, same framework, less lots.
Jacob, could I ask you to, next time you come to the map, come up here so our audience, our viewing audience can see it as well as the individuals in the council chambers. They're straining their necks to try to see what you're saying. Can you do that again for us? Please?
Yeah, sure. When we launched that overhead.
That's right. That's really helpful.
Yeah.
Need your current antenna back.
Yeah, I know. So let's just cover each section so you can see the differences. So first of all, this southerly end, you have this hammerhead type cul-de-sac design. And whereas here you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's a distinct difference there. In this middle section,
Comes my head in the way.
It's over. You're fine.
You have a consolidation of lots here. These ones are pretty much the same. And then when we get up to this area, you can see the difference just visually. I'm not going to count them, but you can see these are larger than that.
Larger lots, less houses.
Exactly. If there's a distinct difference in this section where you have 1, 2, 3. Again, they're stacked up here, not so stacked along Pittsburgh Road, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4. And so you can see there's an overall reduction of the lots from 46 to 34. It's a 20% reduction, 26% reduction, excuse me. and no lot is under 7,000 square foot lot size.
I like that up here. You can reach all the way to the top here too.
Yeah. So it's from a density standpoint, it's a watered down version of the original. So with that, at the last meeting, we generated a potential revised list of conditions of approval, which we shared with the applicant, and the applicant seemed to tentatively agree to those. Now, I always say tentatively because you just never know for sure until it's approved, if it's going to be approved and appealed. But they did provide indication they were agreeable. And that included this extra fee to deal with the sanitary sewer issues, which was an estimated amount of around $6,600 per equivalent dwelling unit. And an important factor is that also included an inflation element because it relates to building permits. Let's say those were a few years out. We know how inflation can work, generally goes up. And so we wanted to make sure that was captured as well. The public record was closed. And so, you know, all the testimony and stuff was closed. And so we're just at that deliberation stage where you discuss and possibly make a decision. Now let's talk about the 120-day rule before we get into the general choices that you have. So state law says city government is supposed to come up with a final decision within 120 days of the application being deemed complete. And those timelines are usually really easy, but they can be challenging when we have appeals because you have to reschedule and that time gets eaten up quite a bit. And that date was in September, and the applicant, based on the discussion we had about our anticipated timeline, granted a written extension to that to October 5th. That was under the assumption that we would possibly have a decision, and then at the next meeting, we would come with the final order for authorization of signature. But this October is kind of weird because of that League of Oregon Cities meeting. And as a result, that meeting has been canceled. And we want to try to honor the 120-day rule. If we don't, some bad things can happen. And so if you make a decision tonight, I'm going to suggest that we have a special meeting just to review and authorize signature of that final document. In talking with the city recorder and when people are here or not here, we talked about Monday, September 26th or Monday, October 3rd. We can talk about that more later, but having that special meeting is part of the conversation. So you have two basic options.
Question.
Please.
Special meeting. If the mayor presides, if he opens the meeting, and can he be a part? Can he do that? Can he be part of any kind of situation on that with that meeting?
Well, because he had to recuse himself, it would probably be a best practice that it would be the council president's signature.
And what's those dates?
We talked about September 26th. That's a Monday, and October 3rd, also a Monday.
I won't be at either one, so it will fall to one of the three council. Yes.
Counselor Topaz.
We could.
Counselor Topaz, okay.
The virtual special meeting?
Would you be able to participate virtually?
like
At the
next
26th
week
or the-
or sooner than that? I mean.
26th is next Monday.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Okay.
In Europe,
When are you leaving?
I'm leaving Saturday.
Okay, yeah, probably not gonna happen before Saturday. I mean, it could, if we come to a decision.
That would be day after tomorrow.
Well, a decision can be made today.
So a decision can be made.
The problem is the final order has to be prepared. And that includes the findings, the conditions, and a lot of that stuff's done, but whipping that up at the same night is.
It's a mechanism as compared to decision. The rest
That's
of
correct, it's the mechanism. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So. What, I mean, yes, the mayor has recused himself from the decision, but if the decision is made without him and then he, as mayor, is authorized to sign it, I'm not understanding, Jacob, what,
He can run the meeting.
we'd run the meeting and
Sign the
sign the
document,
document.
because we're the ones who voted, not him.
Because it would just be, we're not voting, we would not be voting on approve, denial or approval. It was said that we would be voting to approve for signature.
Yeah, it's a weird one. Ed, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Ed, so here's the question. So citizens objected to the mayor's participation in this matter. So he has recused himself from all proceedings regarding this subdivision. The issue that we have, for various reasons, we may not have a lot of people. And if he has recused himself, even though he's not necessarily participating in the subdivision decision, which may occur tonight, would he still be able to sign the final order on behalf of the other council members?
There are actually two questions involved in that. And the first was one that was not asked is when the final findings are presented to the council has to vote to adopt them. And so that would be something in which he could not participate. And so it would, in terms of him signing, yes, mayors sign resolutions and ordinances that they opposed and voted against all the time. But it's probably a better practice for him not to sign it. It would be better for either the council president or the presiding council member to sign it. Simply, I don't believe there's any ethics violation, but it would be better to just avoid the appearance of impropriety by having him sign it. And it is just the appearance at that point. There would be nothing technically wrong with him signing. But the first piece is you do have to vote as a council to adopt the findings. So that should probably be done either before Council President Morton leaves on Saturday, or if there's still a majority in favor of whatever the decision is tonight, then it could be voted on by the remaining members. But it could be problematic if the loss of another member, the presiding officer, changes the majority. That's tricky, and so we'd have to wait till the end of the meeting, wait till the end of this hearing to see how the vote goes to determine when those findings should be done. And I will commit my office to getting anything that we're asked to do as absolutely as quickly as possible, but it would mean holding another special meeting this week if Council President Morton is going to be gone on Saturday. So
There's absolutely no way that we can hold that special meeting following the decision tonight. Is that correct?
I'm not sure I understand the question. There's no way you can hold the meeting?
A special meeting. We have to have, 48 hours of notice to hold a special meeting? 24? Okay, so.
24 is typical. If there's a declaration of an emergency, it can be less than that. And if, for example, there were a 3-2 vote tonight, and without Council President Morton, it became a 2-2 vote, that might present enough of an emergency where you could do it on the statute just requires the maximum amount of time possible. And if you announced it tonight as a date certain, I think you could get around that without a great deal of issue.
Advise us of our options near the end of the meeting, please. Okay, can you hang with us?
Well, I'll definitely hang with you at least until the end of this matter, because at the end of this matter, we can talk about it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so there's that little thing we gotta deal with. So let's talk about the options. So denial or approval. Now, denial, the key thing is the sanitary sewer issue. And so the issue with the sanitary sewer is a considerable amount of the conveyance infrastructure, the piping, is between the subject property and where it's treated at the wastewater treatment plant is above capacity now. And currently, and that's in our wastewater master plan. And the industry standard for capacity is 0.85%. So you have a pipe, there's that much fluid in there, you need some open space to help with flow. And what our plan says is that a considerable amount of that piping is more than that number. So it's at or above capacity now. An interesting component of that infrastructure as it relates to our sanitary sewer master plan is it is a priority 3. Now, there's no infrastructure that's a priority 2, which is interesting, but we do have some that's a priority 1. And the big difference is that this infrastructure does not have a known history of surcharging. And that is when the pipes are over capacity and there's too much effluent going down there, they back up. And they could back out of manholes and stuff like that. So there's not a history of surcharging like there is elsewhere. And the question is, well, when could that happen? So our development code has a standard, and I'll just read that because this is a considerable component of this. Permits denied. Development permits may be restricted by the commission or council where a deficiency exists in the existing sewer system or portion thereof, which cannot be rectified within the development and which, if not rectified, will result in a threat to public health or safety, surcharging of existing mains, or violations of state or federal standards pertaining to the operation of the sewerage treatment system. Now, so there's the potential surcharge, which is talked about in there, and then it also talks about violations of state or federal standards. And we know that DEQ can fine for surcharging in certain events. And so, you know, could this result in that or couldn't it? You know, that's kind of the question. Another thing to consider, which isn't, it's more of a broader thought, is we outside of the review of this particular subdivision, we kind of queried the council back in April. Well, we have the sewer master plan, we have some interesting things to think about. And the general consensus was, to try to not halt development and see if we can, charge another fee to help compensate for that, as long as it was legally feasible. And that's what gets us into a potential approval of this subdivision. So as I mentioned, at our August meeting, we drafted some conditions, we presented that to the applicants, and they were open to that. And that included an estimated charge, in addition to the normal system development charges and utility rates, of approximately $6,600, which was proportional to the amount that this development would present to the system. The phone thought that as well. So the applicant seemed to be okay with that, and at the very least, you're not ignoring the issue. Now, the complexity is, all right, if we were looking at this development itself, and there was nothing else happening now or in the future, it might be easy. My concern is, I'm a planner, I always have to think about the future, right? And we know we have other developments, we know that the sewer problem is widespread. Not all parts in town are influenced by it, but a considerable amount of town is. And then we get into a question of moratorium law. So state law says when a government has a pattern of practice of restricting or denying development permits because of infrastructure delay, you're supposed to develop a moratorium or this other strategy. And that requires providing notice to the state and all this stuff that just doesn't happen overnight. And right now, there's no pattern or practice. This is a new concept that we're dealing with in development review. This would be the first one. But, this will help set somewhat of a framework about how we look at these other developments that are coming down the pipeline. And so, maybe a denial would hold up if this is challenged to the Land Use Board of Appeals, because there is no pattern of practice. And the standard could be argued that it's pretty clear. But the second one, the third one, the fourth one, at some point, we're going to have our foot in our mouths and have to do something more, potentially. And that's just the way state law works, and keeping cities to within a certain, well, I guess from cities going wild, I suppose. So this extra fee at least is not ignoring the issue, and it doesn't fund everything. It would be inappropriate to ask the developer to fund millions of dollars required to upgrade the system, but it does get a start, a proportional start. And in the land use world, when we impose conditions, we want to make sure there's a nexus. Oh, we have a sewer problem, we have to address it, clear nexus, and there's proportionality. And we do, our consultants helped us figure a number. The applicant seems okay with that number. And so those are the things that you have to weigh. Now, in talking with our legal counsel about it, because this is a big deal, we wanted to make sure we weren't doing something that would get us in trouble in the future. And so we did have some time to touch base with them. And if you do approve it, we have the conditions in the record, which will make it easier because with subdivisions, the conditions are complex. But we would recommend adding another condition in addition to the ones that are already in the record, that the owner developer and subsequent buyers will indemnify the city from any costs, fines, or penalties arising from or associated with overflow or discharge from the sanitary sewer system until the system is upgraded as contemplated in the plan. So there's that indemnification protection that we would suggest being added as a condition, assuming that the council is considering approval. So that's where we're at. That's the hot potato that you get to deal with tonight.
Jacob, you mentioned that there hasn't been any problems with the present sewer. How old is the present sewer? Is it 50 years old, 20 years old, 10 years old, as compared to down here in town where it's 100 years old?
I would hope our engineering or public works staff has that answer, because I don't.
Closer to 50.
15? So we're really
50.
50, and the line we've got to fix to bring up. We have enough capacity. In that 50 years, that we had a major water episode, we were overloaded, or has there been building in that area? So most of the housing being on that line being new.
According to the master plan, and we've had no known, I think there has been an overflow on sites closer to street. That's why it's a priority 3, because the model shows that that line is maxed out. So basically that means that if you keep adding more of that flow, eventually it will start coming out of the manholes. The priority 1 is down here, downtown, because these do overflow when we have heavy rain events.
My point being, if something overflows down here, everybody knows about it.
Yeah.
Out yonder in the west, it might overflow and a whole lot of the town doesn't know about it.
Because public works would still know about it.
The public, I know, but I'm talking about people get upset at us. But the fact that it's so new and it's a capacity, it sounds like that area is gonna be redone and the capacity is gonna be upgraded. And I assume there's enough ground west of this area to build more houses. So we have to think of tripling the size or something like that. Would that be a fair statement?
It's an 8-inch now, and it's recommended to increase it to a 15-inch.
That's 4 times.
Sharon, in our transportation plan, is there a plan to upgrade Sykes Road and the infrastructure in the master plan? You know?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Yes, Sykes is a higher classified road and not entirely developed. So, yes.
Thank you. Where the master plan needs to be updated.
Well, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so the master plan for the transportation also will be one of the big ones we're gonna tackle very soon that has not been updated for also a long time. So I'm sure it will address Sykes Road as a potential one that will be updated.
So my question is very simple, is that if there is upgrades to Sykes Road in the master plan and the city decides to go ahead with that, would that include putting a larger trunk line in there so that
So the 15-inch that's sized out for the future, that is gonna include all the UGB, all the undeveloped areas. So it includes sizing it for all of that additional property that could be developed in the city.
Short answer, yes.
So the answer is yes.
And the timeline on that is,
For the development,
or the 8 to 15-inch line.
for sizing it,
Yeah,
we are working on that right now.
digging dirt or designing it,
We're securing funds.
okay?
To start the design, and that design will take a year, and assuming construction goes smooth, between 1 and 3 years for all inclusive.
So in 3 years, there'll be no problem out at the Comstock place.
Hopefully not.
But that's compared to never or tomorrow.
Correct. It will certainly address that.
You've got a 3-year window.
That does include putting this in the 3-year time cycle is kind of in balancing the priorities in a sense, unless they're all being done at once.
So we looked at doing all 3 trunk lines at once. As you know, a big effort from the city to address all the issues all around, to also avoid future development issue coming on the inside. So that's the plan, yes.
Yeah, so the current loan application we have to DEQ is gonna cover the 2 priority 1 basin, which is basin 5 down here on 4th Street. Basin 4, which is the middle trunk, and then we also included the Sykes Road basin.
The 3-year window. With a lot of pipes in the ground.
Well, that's good. I hate to build the road and have to dig it up, so.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Right, great
That's
information.
very, very appreciative from my point of view.
Jacob, an opinion on a development like this, how many years would the development take to be fully developed?
It is in phases, and so, you know, they could take full advantage of the phasing and, you know, extending it in a window of 7 years. But we've seen other developments that happen a lot quicker. Conceivably, if they got preliminary plat approval, within 6 months, they could be, or sooner, they could get their development plans for the infrastructure approved and be breaking ground out there. And then within a year, start submitting building permits. And then depending on how fast the builder builds, some production builders will submit 6 or more permits at once. Other ones that are a little more custom will be a little slower. But conceivably, this could be completed in a 3-year period.
That coincides with what I just heard about the master plan of Sykes Road. Is that correct? I'm making that assumption.
I think it's a safe assumption, given.
So if it takes a builder conceivably 3 years to construct all the lots, and if the city has in their plans 3 years to put the trunk lines in Sykes Road, it coincides. That's to me,
That would be an ideal situation, yes.
an idea.
Would reduce the risk tremendously, right? If we are able to simultaneously kind of match.
Yeah.
But if we delay this development 2 years, then it becomes quite safe. Statistically safe.
I know one thing, nothing ever goes according to plan. So the risk is always there, delays from either way, either side, but.
Well, but just to we're not eliminating this development. We're putting a delay on it of a couple of years that's pretty close to the building time anyway. So, let's say we're starting 2 years later than today.
We as a city.
No, he's talking about a moratorium for
Okay.
buildings so that it ensures that the Sykes Road is in place by the time they start building. So that's my, is that my?
Yes.
Thank you.
Exactly correct.
And if not, the timelines in their best sense would coincide. 3 years for Sykes and 3 years for the builders if they're on it and if we're on it as well.
Jacob, how long would that condition that you proposed adding last then, based off of that?
The indemnification condition?
The condition of the overflowing.
Well, the fee. I'm assuming you're asking about the fee that would.
That you propose that we add to the conditions we already have about if there's overflows that
Oh,
we wouldn't be held liable.
Yeah, that, I mean, the indemnification would be based on the lack of capacity for the system, and so. And the way the condition is written is until the system is upgraded as contemplated in the plan. So it would sunset upon upgrading of the infrastructure.
So basically sunset 3 years, theoretically.
If the planet's aligned,
The plan.
the planet's aligned.
Anything else to add, Jacob?
I guess I can, you know, there was a lot of testimony. And, you know, it's common to have testimony about traffic and, you know, you can't blame anybody for that. And I want to talk about the streets, really quick. Because there was a lot of testimony about those. So if you recall, we dedicated right of way in this area to help facilitate a street on the southern end because of this wetland here. That way there was a way to get access there. So this right of way has been dedicated. And so this is a pretty clear spot for a street. And it's nice and equidistant between two other streets. In the case of Westboro Way, this street is not a dead end. It is a stub street intended to be extended, and it will be an official dead end with this cul-de-sac. And so that's a natural place to put a street. You also have, and here, that's not a dead end street. That is a street that has always been intended to be extended. And so it's a natural place for a street connection to be. Willie Lane, you don't quite have a street in between here. The stub is over there, but you're stubbing it this way to eventually make that connection. Pittsburgh, being an arterial street, the code is very clear. On arterial streets that we do not allow new approaches for subdivisions and have to find alternative routes for those. You have Meadowview Drive, which is a natural place, especially because it connects to that. And our code is pretty clear about connecting streets. You know, I can't blame the neighbors for being concerned about that. If I was a neighbor, I wouldn't want the street there either. Unfortunately, we have to look at systems in the city and the overall public good. And so that's why that street connection was made, and that helps distribute traffic along the various streets. Now, there was a lot of testimony. If you want to talk about those more, we certainly can. But because a lot of time was spent on that, I want to at least talk about those briefly. So unless you're thinking about something different, you know, we're still back to that, you know, denial based on that one standard or approval with the conditions, the most recent conditions from the last meeting with that additional indemnification condition.
Okay, let's talk about another. Let's say we approve it that they're gonna indemnify it. What is the possibility that there'll be enough homes in this place to be able to afford the indemnification? As you know, we've been having strange weather affairs around the country and around the world. We get a couple of super rains and we blow the sewers out because they're undersized in the next year and a half.
Well, it's not a matter of a sum of money. It's a matter of them, of this subdivision, enacting a legal case against the city in the event of a surcharge or something like that. So it's an extra layer of protection for the city, allowing the development, given the sewer issue, knowing that there's some potential there.
I'm worried about the city wins, how do they pay for it? There's 3 houses that are built and there's only 3 houses that are sold at this moment when it happens. In 15 years, when it's fully occupied, it's a different story as far as possible monies available from that section.
Well, the fine from DEQ would be the city's burden. But individual suits such as my kid saw the sewer in the street, my kid decided to play in it and is now dead. So that would be the kind of suit if it came from a lot of this subdivision that would protect the city. I know that was an extreme case. Say. Sorry. I'm not one for subtleties.
That's great. I mean, very clear. The problem is we have a physical amount of sewage that's gonna come out of this area. We got this funny time shift. Right now, we can't handle it. But sometime later, we will be able to handle it. But how do we justify timing this development? We say, well, you can have it, but you gotta wait 3 years. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, the planning commission talked about that. We talked about allowing the subdivision to be completed, but not allowing building permits to be issued until the upgrades were done. That way, at least they get the lots in place. Whether or not a bank would wanna provide financial assistance with that, I don't know. It would be a matter of the developer fronting the capital for those improvements and then banking on a market 3 years down the road. It's conceptual, how much the stomach or how much the applicant will stomach that, I don't know.
But you said it, we can say you can divide it, but you can't build on it. Go for it.
Yeah, so when we talked to the planning commission about that, that was one of the things we talked about. And another condition that we talked about, once the lots are created, you could conceivably have multiple different owners. And so when we talked about that, we talked about having a notice on the deed. That way, anybody buying that understands that there's that delay of building permits. The last thing you want are 34 people in here saying, hey, I didn't know about this. What are you gonna do about it? And if there's a notice on the deed that would come up in title, it's more difficult to make that argument.
I think it's also important to remember what Jacob brought up earlier, which is that it becomes problematic when we're setting standards for building and development in the city. So if we do this and we, make all of these rules, I think that's something that we're gonna have to hold standard to other developers. And so we have to, I think, I feel more comfortable not adding a lot of those layers to it because I think it will make it very complex for us going forward in developing the city. That's my thought about that.
So one more thing, what's the timeline, a suggested timeline from, for building to start after pulling permits and going through the whole permit process, the plans, going through the whole entire process, usually takes about 6 months to 9 months or up to a year prior to building, brick and mortar building. Is that true?
Yeah, that's a fair window of time based on my observations here.
Thank you. So that can be, it's obvious why I asked that question because that's almost a built-in moratorium for a year.
Yeah, it's the buildings and the impacts to the sewer.
Impact to the
Will
sewer.
not be tomorrow, they will be into the nearest future. But if the planets align, as we hope, that's even less time of accepting that surcharge risk.
Well, is that it for you?
Yeah, unless you have questions.
Well, I do have a question. I would like to know what is the staff's recommendation?
Because of the moratorium issue, I think, you know, having a significantly delayed plan that put us in this issue, and because we could, you know, we may not get spanked on this one, but it's certainly a decision that we would have to look to for the other developments that people are talking to us about now. I think we're probably safer. I know it's hard to say that, and it's probably hard to hear that. It's hard for me to say it as the planner, but it's probably safer to approve it. The DEQ, you know, and part of this is, you know, we're having worked for local government for 21 years and seeing how some money is spent. And, you know, this is why city county insurance services is pretty picky about things. Just a personnel matter can make a DEQ fine look like a joke. And that stuff happens all the time. And so, you know, it's a nasty thing to say, but sometimes those fines are just simply cost of doing business. Because of the other development that we're going to see, and the council, even though it was outside of this proposal, talked about not wanting to hinder development. I think the needle would lean towards approval with the conditions in the record, including the indemnification one, which we talked about tonight.
With no moratorium.
Yeah, the moratorium is a separate matter. A genuine moratorium.
Well, it's a condition, is it not? It would fall under a condition.
Without a delay condition that we kind of talked about.
Right, okay. And then in terms of timelines of moratoriums, it can vary, I would imagine, from 1 month to several years, correct?
Yeah, you know, I haven't dealt with the moratorium in the state, so.
Okay, and then my question is, is that one of the precedents? Is a moratorium a precedent that you're looking for?
It is, we are trying to avoid a de facto precedent of a de facto moratorium, which is the pattern or practice. So this is why our backs are against the wall.
Okay.
We have no denials. This could be denied. They would argue it's a de facto moratorium. We say, no, there's no pattern or practice. This is the first one. And, you know, there's some chance we would be victorious. But it's not just this development coming down the line. There are several others that we have to make these tough decisions on. And the second one, the third one, the fourth one, at some point, you know, someone with good legal counsel is going to say, hey, look, wait a minute. We're reviewing the record. You have several of these. You can't do this. You have to enact a genuine moratorium instead of denying. And that's the pickle. It's the way state law works for genuine moratoriums. And that's the reason I'm saying the needle is leaning towards approval. Because I'm not just thinking about this proposal, I'm thinking about all the other ones that we've been talking about, all the other ones that we can see. Now, if we had a great recession tomorrow, you know, that may buy us some time. And, you know, they talk about the big R word. I don't know if it's going to be as nasty as the last one we had. But, you know, there's no guarantee for that.
Now, on these other developments, are they gonna depend on more sewer lines that aren't there yet, or more capacity that's not there yet?
Yes, like I said, this conveyance problem is widespread. It's widespread. But some places we know there is a pattern of surcharging and, you know, if we have a development in those areas, you know, we'll have to think about it a little bit more.
Case by case, depends on location and development.
And what could happen in this case, so moratoriums are brutal, right? So you go through that process, it's gonna be politically sensitive, you're gonna have a full room, you know, it's like raising water rates or, you know, having a sugar tax or stuff like that. You're gonna fill this room up. You're gonna have people who like the town the way it is, they like the peace and quiet, they're gonna be saying, yes, we hadn't had a moratorium. You can have the developer saying, what are you doing? You can't do this. And it's gonna make your lives, you're gonna be thinking, why did I get into the city council? And yes, yeah. But what could conceivably happen is, well, what may make it more politically palatable are surcharges. Because then everybody's gonna see, whoa, the bleep is flowing down the street. This is a serious problem. I didn't say the word, John. You know what I meant? And you know, I'm just thinking out loud as I think about this proposal, but this is the reason why I'm saying the needle leans that way. It may be more palatable, and hopefully we don't have to deal with that. Hopefully there's no surcharges, it gets upgraded before we have those problems. And everybody's worries were for naught. We finally updated the master plan to catch the issue.
Okay, let's say we go forward, we've got an undersized line and we have stuff flowing down the street. Could DEQ come and say, you can't build anymore until you fix the lines? Because they, you know, imposed the moratorium on building in the area served by the sewer line.
I don't know if DEQ can impose it. I think they could say, hey, we're gonna make your life worse until you do this, or until you start showing that you're either gonna fix it or delay it. I don't think DEQ themselves, they would just fine and do other nasty stuff to motivate.
But they couldn't stop us, as far as you know.
As far as I know.
But legally, they could cost us a lot of money, but not stop us.
That's correct, yeah.
Now, when we had the I&I, the EPA said you can't dump your sewer in the river. You gotta put a sewer plant in it. And then when they said you can't use combined sewage, you gotta have stormwater and sanitary. Or we're gonna come in and do it for you. Could that happen?
Well, we have separate systems now.
Well, in some places we do, but we had a drop dead date. If we didn't get done by a certain date, they would come in and do it for us and then charge us.
Yeah, Sharon,
I'm not aware of that part of the.
Because I heard by 2010, if some things weren't done, they take over after that.
As far as I know, it would just be a fine.
It would be a fine.
If we continued having those overflows associated with the I&I project.
I'm worried about them physically coming in or stopping. Money is money.
I think it probably takes a lot for DEQ to
Actually,
just get in and do something like
Sort of playing to their weakness.
that. Well, I mean, DEQ, they're aware of our wastewater issues. They have a copy of our master plan. I mean, they are aware of it and they know all about it already.
So our real problem is not that we don't want them there, is we can't have them there right now because of infrastructure.
because of what?
Because of the sewer system, the systems that serve that piece of ground. That's our problem. We have a physical problem, not an emotional problem.
Yeah, we have a physical problem, and the physical problem is not terribly compatible with state law. And that's the pickle. That's the pickle that we're in.
In the federal constitution, when they give Congress the power to make laws, it says you cannot make laws against natural law. Well, the state of Oregon evidently didn't read that far down.
So. One other question, and Patrick, you might want to. Any answer on this?
Yes, you're good too.
So if we get Patrick, because he's our liaison on planning, I didn't mean to leave you.
Oh, no, I was just saying I was ready to make my statement whenever you're ready to
Yeah,
call
okay.
on me, so.
So, I'm looking at one side of approval and the other side denial. Heard a lot of things about approving and what kind of issues we can get, the city can get themselves into, especially with DEQ and other concerns. That we deny. And we don't have a good reason for denying. Is the contractors, are we vulnerable for lawsuits from the contractors?
Yes.
Pardon me?
If it's possible. That it gets challenged to LUBA. The city loses to LUBA. And LUBA says, you know what? You have to pay the opponent's attorney fees too. And so we want to make sure that the basis for denial is clear and objective.
And that depends on our testimony tonight. What he says, what I say, what Jessica says, and what Patrick says.
Well,
yes, it does. I'm sure it does.
The fact is,
the reasons why we would deny and the reasons why we would support.
And that's why we specified the reason to deny, and that's why I read the standard.
Right.
Because it directly correlates with our master plan. You reach out. Sure. Permits denied. Development permits may be restricted by the commission or council where a deficiency exists in the existing sewer system or portion thereof, which cannot be rectified within the development, and which, if not rectified, will result in a threat to public health or safety, surcharging of existing mains, or violations of state or federal standards pertaining to the operation of the sewage treatment system, sorry, got a little tongue tied in that last one. So it's talking about the surcharging and the violations of state standards. And those are the things, those are real possibilities. What we don't know is, without a significant history of surcharging, when is that tipping point? When do we start seeing that? Is it one more house? Is it 10 more? Is it 50? But we know based on our plan, the existing conditions are greater than that 0.85, which is the normal maximum standard. If you, yeah, in fact, Kathy, go to that map. So it's red, not orange, basically. So the X on the map is the location of the subject property. And where the wastewater treatment lagoon is on the very right. And let's just look at the system along Sykes. You can see that it's in red. Now the orange is the 0.85 to 0.99. That's, at that industry standard or higher. 1 is a step above that.
Counsel, you ready to deliberate on this?
Jessica had something to say.
Well, I just have my statement of my
He's ready to
reasoning for
deliberate.
my, yeah.
Okay.
You guys want me to go first or?
Well, Patrick, are you ready to?
I'm ready to-
You have any other questions?
Not any other questions, I have ready to state my position based on what I.
Mr. Topaz, are you ready?
I am ready.
Jessica, you want to weigh in first?
Okay, so the developers have made a good faith effort in accommodating the request, bigger lot sizes, we've seen that. And they've readjusted as we asked, and they have come forward with a considerate plan accommodating the wetlands and respecting the current growth in this area. And with that, I'm in agreement, so staff recommendation of approval.
I am afraid of denying it. I'm afraid of the physical problems with the sewer line. I think we've drastically underrated how bad the danger is. Just because the way the environment's been changing so much.
We've got one. Patrick or myself, what's your,
I'll give you as president the honor to give the final thought. Yeah, it's always, it's especially difficult as liaison with the planning commission to potentially make a decision that overturns decision that I thought was well considered. And I think in September say, and then I kind of walked it back that I believe the planning commission had made the correct decision at that time based on the two conditions that the Plat didn't meet the R7 standards and the deficiency of the sewer system. In the times that has passed, it's the response to the zoning has been met. It's a different proposal. It meets the R7 zoning. And after meeting with staff, met with Mohammed and Sharon and Jacob to talk about the plan. I believe that if we are to reprioritize our master plan, move this basin from priority 3 to priority 1, with the knowledge that Sharon has already initiated work to secure the funding and beginning the process. At our last meeting, one member of the planning commission did speak. And it was a member of the commission who voted to deny the original approval, but when he spoke at the last meeting, it was a neutral position, I think reflecting the changed circumstances and conditions. And also one reason I asked Jacob to reread that statute, the 3 words that stuck with me were the cannot be rectified. This is a condition that can be rectified, and we have a concrete plan moving forward to address that. Yes, we cannot bank, nothing is certain. We can't say that the improvements that 1 to 3 year time span will directly coincide with the potential 1 to 3 years for development of the property. Life throws us many curveballs and we don't know. With so I am inclined to vote to approve the Plat with the conditions of the sewer surcharge, the condition for that releasing the condition of approval that the developer and subsequent buyers indemnify the city, and that we begin work on improving the system as soon as possible.
Build process.
So, I'm would be for approval with those conditions.
I'm gonna go along with the priority of, looking at priority number 3 and making certain that, that happens as soon as we possibly can. I mean, I think that, if that is a priority that can happen, as soon as 3 years, I feel confident that Sykes Road will be, in safe condition. The staff recommendation is strong. I mean, that's something that I have to consider. You folks are the professionals in the room. You're looking at council that are basically have to make these decisions as non-professionals, professional that were in a sense as council people representing the people. But you have to, I have to stand behind, our staff. That's how I feel. So that's my vote is to approve.
So the motion, the easy motion would be the conditions, the revised conditions from our August 17th meeting, which has all that stuff. And then the indemnification one, which I can read again to the record. Make your motion easier.
The additional charge is has been part of the August, was part of the August.
Yes, yeah, we vetted those conditions and the estimated amount with them back then. To help facilitate options. Potentially to have a decision at that meeting. Of course, you wanted more time and that was perfectly fine.
So I am reluctant to actually vote on the motion tonight until we see everything in black and white. The actual statement with the conditions. My understanding is we can have that, we can delay that vote until the special meeting and at the same time also vote to approve.
Well, the conditions are in writing, they have been since August.
But I'm saying, but it does not now include
this new one.
I guess
we could make a motion and accept the conditions.
accept the
have been
conditions.
proposed to us.
Accept the conditions that
But if
have
you're
been.
comfortable with that.
No, okay, I am, as long as we understand that we have all seen those conditions, we know what those conditions
And
are.
we have a chance to review them.
Review that.
before voting on the final authorization of signature.
So. then I would be comfortable with that is now the time to make. Motion.
And I'm getting ornery on that just because of the time frame that we're dealing with.
So is this the time to make the motion at this point in time, we do that or later? in the
Yes,
meeting?
it is. And Jacob, can you help us with a sample motion?
Yes, so based on what I'm hearing, the motion would be to approve the preliminary plat subdivision based on the revised conditions from the August 17th meeting. Let me make sure I'm right on that. Yeah, the most revised conditions from the August meeting, and then the additional condition of the owner, developer, and subsequent buyers will indemnify the city from any costs, fines, or penalties arising from or associated with overflow or discharge from the sanitary sewer system until the system is upgraded as contemplated in the plan.
Do I hear a so moved or a motion? I saw you taking that down.
I will make an attempt to make that then to say. I move that we approve the preliminary plat subdivision based on the revised conditions, August 17th. And the additional condition. I'll help you. Well, that's what I was looking for. Additional condition. Yeah. But developer. Can't read that word. The owner, developer, and subsequent buyers will indemnify the city from any costs, fines, or penalties arising from or associated with overflow or discharge from the sewer system, from the sanitary sewer system until the system is upgraded, as contemplated in the plan. Sorry, my eyes are not working with my contacts. Thank you.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the I'll make certain I get this right. The appeal of the planning commission's denial.
Well, you're approving the preliminary plat subdivision
Okay,
report.
you approved the preliminary plat. Okay. And is there any comments now at all?
My comment is, I know we received a lot of, I think, sincere and heartfelt testimony from residents in the area. One of the most difficult things about being in a position like this is that I do believe in the sincerity of folks when they are sharing their concerns about the potential impact on their current living situations and conditions. But that is not the basis on which we make our decisions. We have to make it based on what we consider the objective. But I do respect and admire folks who have come before us and have spoken out. But I also thank the staff for their guidance and taking the time to be with me to help me through this difficult issue.
Thank you. Jessica, nothing? Anything to add?
Yes, I do. I find it upsetting that I'm considered non-knowledgeable in technical affairs, especially engineering, flow, sanitary type work. It's a gravity job and favoring more caution than not. Definitely want to see the development there, but I am, until the sewer system is adequate condition, I can see more damage to the present part of our community if something goes wrong. And based on what we've seen recently in weather patterns in the extreme, I'm very afraid of what's going to happen. So that's why I'm against it. It's totally a physical measurement system that I'm worried about.
Oh, I respect your opinion. I respect everyone's opinion in this room and that has been set forth. I'm fearful. I'm fearful of contractors coming back on a decision of a denial and going to LUBA. And that's where we get into big, huge problems with our city and with our planning department and with it. So I'm fearful there. I'm fearful as you are with your concerns. But once the city gets in hot water with LUBA, that's a tough place to be. For planning from now on out, from everything that we do, it's a tough one. And attorneys can make it really, really tough for us. So that's why my vote went to approving, and I'm going along with staff recommendation again. So that's where I'm at. All in favor? Patrick?
Aye.
Jessica?
Aye.
Steve?
Nay.
And Doug Martin is aye.
And then, we gotta talk about special meeting. Yeah, I don't know if you wanna do that
Oh,
now.
where's the attorney at, right?
Is Ed still with us?
Yes, I am.
So Ed, you,
What's our alternatives for a special meeting? I am going out of the country that has been established for over a year to visit family and friends in Europe. So
My wife and I are quite jealous of you. We would like to be there ourselves. And we will go next year. But in order to now get the findings completed and in front of council, with the mayor having recused himself, and even in your absence, there would be a 2-to-1 vote in favor of supporting the decision. So I don't think it's critical that it be done this week, although if it were possible, that would be, all the better. I'm sure the applicant would like to have it behind them. Otherwise, anytime between now and October 5th, unless the applicant would extend the timeline to get the approval, and there may be some congeniality on their part, knowing that they are going to get an approval to wait until your return also. So I think it's appropriate for you as the presiding officer to ask the applicant if they would postpone until you are returned, and without that, then have a special meeting between now and October 5th when the time runs out.
so without,
I can't do it.
Should be called in.
Yeah, so my time will run out.
well, he's saying based on the vote,
Yes.
that your inclusion isn't necessarily necessary.
Okay.
Because conceivably, the vote, Topaz having denied it may not support the findings, but the two that were in favor would. And so I think that's the assumption. And so the first question, so now we drag the applicant into this. So because the 5th has been canceled, if there is no special meeting, the next meeting the council meets is October 19th. And so without a special meeting and with an approval from the applicant to extend the 120-day rule, we could just keep this on the normal council schedule and bring the order for their approval on the 19th.
But Doug, you're not here anyway, right?
Yes, I'll be here.
You will be on the 19th.
19th.
Oh. I thought you're gone all of October, just a couple weeks.
Most of it.
Gotcha, all right.
So, Commissioner Martin, when do you get back?
Coming back, Sunday evening on the, is that 16th, I believe? Yeah.
So could I ask for like a recess of 5 minutes to talk about it with my client?
I think that's fair. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, yeah, you can continue on with it.
We'll grant you a recess. 5 minutes.
Great. Well, if you want to continue with your agenda or.
We'll be back at 7:39.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Say who they are for the record.
I'm David Peterson, I'm the attorney for the applicant.
I'm sorry, 8:39.
Okay, thank you.
The board approves resolution, gets an amendment. You can do that.
Okay, so what we'll do during that recess is we'll come back to our agenda. And we'll start with item number 2. And that would be resolution number 1966. A resolution to establish water, sewer, and storm drainage utility rates, charges, and administrative rules.
So moved.
Been moved and seconded that we adopt resolution number 1966 as read. Item number 3. Oh, we have to vote. I'm sorry. Patrick? Jessica?
Aye.
Steven?
Aye.
Doug says aye. And we'll move, so the motion has been unanimously approved. Approve and authorize for signature number 3, agree with St. Helens Marine LLC for harbor master services and city docks and water.
That we approve and authorize or authorize for signature agenda items number 3 to 4.
Say 3 and 4, Doug.
3? No, just 3.
Oh, just 3? Oh, okay.
You're probably looking at the old agenda.
You have 3 and 4 there.
For the harbor master.
Okay.
With the
But we can go
one by one.
one by one if I want. Is that good?
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so I'm gonna go one by one if that's okay.
so I move that we approve authorize for signature agenda item number 3, agreement with St. Helens Marina LLC for harbor master services at city docks and water.
Second that.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve for authorized signature item number 3 as read. All in favor, Pat? Jessica
I am so excited about it too. Thank you.
and Steve?
Aye.
Okay, and I as well. Motion is passed unanimously. And item number 4 for authorize and approve for signature, separation and release agreement with Matt Brown.
I move that we approve and authorize for signature the separation and release agreement with Matt Brown.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve and authorize for signature separation and release agreement with Matt Brown. Take a vote. Patrick? Aye. Jessica?
Aye.
Stephen?
Aye.
And Doug says aye as well. Unanimous on that vote as well. Appointments to cities, boards, and conditions. Appoint Ellen Jacobson to the library board.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we appoint Ellen Jacobson to the library board. Discussion.
Had some good people. And the board went through the applicants and comments and excellent. Definitely recommended from the library point of view.
Let's take a vote. All those in favor, I will and or opposed, Stephen
Aye.
and Jessica,
Aye.
Patrick and Doug. Aye. Unanimously passed. Consent agenda for acceptance. Item number 6, library board minutes dated August 8th, 2022. I'll add all these together. Parks and Recreation Commission mission dated July 11th and August 8th, 2022. Planning Commission minutes dated August 9th, 2022.
So moved.
Your second? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Consent agenda items number 6, 7, and 8 as read. Patrick? Aye. Jessica?
Aye.
Stephen?
Aye.
And Doug, aye. Unanimously passed. I'll go one more here. Consent agenda for approval, items number 9 and 10. 9 is amended finance director job description. 10 is accounts payable bill list.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that consent agenda for approval, items 9 and 10 are up for vote. Patrick? Aye. Jessica?
Aye.
Stephen?
Aye.
And Doug, aye. Unanimously passed. We'll come out of your recess now, and we're back on to we've just gone through item number 10 on our agenda. And would you like to
Up here.
come on up and speak?
Sure. So once again, I'm David Peterson. I'm the attorney for the applicant. The applicant will agree to extend the 120-day clock to October 19th. So that you could hopefully adopt your decision at your regularly scheduled meeting on that date.
Appreciate that, and that's we apologize for the mayor being absent. But I think it was legally the right thing to do, and I apologize for not being here as well to facilitate the dates and times. So hopefully we accept your approval.
That's all right. Enjoy your vacation. You guys have a lot to do, so
Thank you.
we'll see you again on the 19th.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And David, if you could provide that in writing, just so.
I'll send you an email tomorrow.
Do we vote on that, or is that all we need?
No, we need to make sure they provide that consent, so we have that.
Work session action items, I don't think there were any. Council members report.
Yes, Steve. The library.
Thank you, hold it. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it so much, and we do appreciate your testimony. We had a very tough decision. Thank you.
And thank you, and I will go home to my wife also. Good night.
Thanks, Ed.
Yep, thank you.
That is dropping. Thanks.
Where did it?
Settle down here.
See, we got a huge crowd home down.
Okay, so Mr. Topaz.
The library interview for the youth librarian will be, according to Suzanne, will be starting week after next. The official time and all is yet to be given to us by Kathy, but that's in the process right now. Hopefully, we will see the trolley operating. We missed out last Friday, a lot of disappointment on seeing the trolley not going around town. On the same note, as the ferry boat that supposed to go to the island, is that in town and is it acceptable to ferry people yet?
The Watchdog taxi is still at Coast Guard.
Okay.
But there is taxi, 2 taxis running.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering about the one we brought out of Florida. That's still under process. Okay. And that's about it.
Patrick, you want to go?
Sure, one, Commissioner Toski spoke about this at the work session that the planning commission has adopted item for as part of their proactive agenda, so to look at the House Bill 3115 regarding state law that will take effect July 1st. Is that right?
I think so.
Yeah, 2023, and then some potential litigation that's going on in other states that might have impact. So I'm really pleased with the planning commission going ahead with this, because I do think they will provide some insight and background, and frankly, I think relieving the council, not completely staff, because staff will be involved working with the proactive committee, but I think will help to provide some good information to us as council as we take a look at our municipal code and policies to see that they conform with the state law and other potential things, and perhaps protect us from some potential liability. I hope that we can get Steve to come on and give his bridged presentation about this issue, but he also did speak at the Parks Commission, Parks and Recreation Commission about it. So anyway, they're doing some great work with that. I put down interviews and
Planning commission vacancies.
it is, okay, thank you. It was, so we do have a couple of, at least 2 positions that will be opening due to the retirement of a couple of longtime members, and possible third should Commissioner Toski win election to the council. I think today we just have 1 applicant. I hope that we try to get the word out and get more people involved in this, especially since we're going to be doing our at least quarterly meetings and working more closely with the planning commission as we develop the waterfront. And then Sunday, I had the opportunity to take a walk through the Halloween Town venue. I parked up at Now Hill and went down the stairs and talked with the young lady who was checking folks as they were going up to see the attraction in Knoxville Park. We got to talk with the Assert people, a couple of stints myself with the parking at the Plymouth Street entrance in October. So I wanted to get a chance to chat and see more of what's that about. Had a chance to talk with the pirate captain, met with a number of the vendors and all. And anyway, it looked like it was a nice soft start, beautiful weather, and a few more weeks to go. And I'm sure a lot more people are going to be coming. So.
And I would, on the planning commission, we have a pool of 4 potentials. We had 3 leftovers from the last time we interviewed. We anticipated having these 2 vacancies, which isn't common. And so those that weren't selected, we said, well, do you want to stay in the pool for this next batch?
You did reach out to,
And those,
well, I mean, reach out and get.
yeah, I guess,
Sorry.
we haven't talked to you about this, so sorry to take over.
No.
Yeah, so Christina reached out to them, said like they were still interested, and so we have that pool this time.
But an additional,
And then any new people that
but yeah,
desire.
I think it would like good to have a bigger pool if we have perhaps. At least 2. Anyway, okay, thanks.
Jessica, what do you have?
Well, I'm just kind of getting myself reoriented after having baby. So she'll be 2 months old this Saturday, and she's super cute, and I love to snuggle her all the time. And I'm really very obsessed with my little baby cub. I will have to bring her one of these times. She's cute. With what? Mask. And the League of Oregon Cities is coming up, which I really excited about going to last year, and then I canceled it. So let's pray that there's no COVID outbreaks or anything crazy happening. But I'm very excited about going to that and getting to meet other leaders and hopefully see how other cities operate and learn a few things from that. And of course, I'm excited about Haunted Town. A lot of hype going on in town and people are very excited about kind of having a normal year again of Halloween and Halloween Town. So very excited about that. That's it.
Thank you. It's time for my report and I wanted to try first names tonight because I like it a little more low key and I hope that's okay with Kathy. And coming around here, it just feels more like family and I like that. So Patrick, you basically in your report said something very important about with Steve Kosky, and I want to piggyback on that just a little bit. And maybe hopefully Sir Kosky goes to the League of Oregon Cities. And is there an outbreak session for that House bill? Do you know of that? Is there an outbreak?
I've seen an agenda item for an outbreak session for that. I
Wow.
don't know if I.
And we got to make certain Mr. Kosky gets to that session. And that's huge because those outbreak sessions then for what they're worth can become an item that you might vote for the legislative session. And it's for the league's lobbyists to take that to the legislature. So it's huge because that represents all the cities in Oregon, small and big. And what the mayor says is that he thinks that, the big cities are kind of wanting to get the small cities to take the bulk of campers out Portland and into the smaller communities. That's the mayor's kind of feel on that. And so I kind of agree with him because if that's going to affect the small cities and not have an effect on the big cities, it makes a lot of sense to me to really listen to Mr. Kosky's arguments. I think it's quite important. Last Parks Commission meeting was interesting because there was a bit of a deliberation that lasted nearly an hour on the Scappoose Bay watershed agreement with intergovernment agreement with the city of St. Helens on doing some work especially in the nature parks and other parks, as well as areas in the adjacent areas along the highway or any of the public areas. A lot of talk about certification of spraying, and if volunteers could do that, our volunteers in our city, rather than utilizing Scappoose Bay watershed. I think that the Parks Commission voted unanimously that Scappoose Bay watershed has the expertise in that in spraying techniques and any kind of work that they do will be in agreement with our Public Works Director, Scappoose Bay watershed, which has another element of control with the city, not giving it all up to Scappoose Bay watershed just to come in and do what they think is important. So there's a need for collaboration. So that was all talked about, and hopefully come to a conclusion that things are okay the way they are. If you haven't been to Dalton Lake Nature Preserve lately, there's been some work that has been accomplished down there for salmon restoration, for specifically the smolts to find their way into Dalton Lake and find their way back out in the natural flow of things. It was all inclusive of keeping the beavers in place there and building a bridge over the, kind of the waterway, with the tide coming in and tide going out. So, if anyone would like to see the results of that fine work, it's a good time to see it is while it's dry. So things are gonna probably mud up a little bit in a while, but they've replanted, they've done so much good work for that. It was a $900,000 grant from Bonneville to involve a restoration in our city limits, not on our property, but in our city limits. And I would recommend it. Anyone interested, people go down and take a look. It's off 4th Street, down by our water treatment plant, or our water pressure treatment plant for our water in that vicinity, Columbia City, 4th Street and Columbia City, and then heading south, 4th Street. If anyone hasn't been there. Yeah.
I was just asking how to get to Dalton Lake. I haven't been there, so.
Pardon me?
I've never been to Dalton Lake.
Okay, so down Highway 30 and take a right and go over the bridge. You've been over the bridge going to Columbia City?
Yeah.
Okay, 4th Street is the first right. You go down 4th Street until you get into a forest, park your car, and then,
Walk that trail. I
Yeah.
did the pathway, but I would never.
It's between the
the lake.
river and the pathway.
yeah, there's a trail now, there's a kiosk there, everything's,
Maybe I'll find it easier this
I
time.
think you will.
Okay.
Yeah. It's wonderful, it's a
Well, the
wonderful,
path Between Columbia
Yeah.
City and St. Helens, but.
a lot of work and restoration.
Yeah. It's,
Patrick, you have anything to add on that report?
no, it's just, no, you said I've been down there as it's progressed, and it's just interesting that how sometimes what nature needs to assist and actually the engineering that is involved. It's just some real interesting stuff. Anyway.
I have one more little issue to add, and it was something that we've already talked about and that that this council person adamantly thought about and kind of opposed what was kind of just a talk, no decisions made or whatever. And I would like to move forward on a land acknowledgement statement for our city. And the land acknowledgement is what has happened in our city prior to the white man coming and developing the land. What was happening there prior? And do we pay any respect to what was happening? And how do we go about doing that then? But a statement would be really a good thing. I'm actively involved in doing that now for a different board. And I'm finding that it has enriched my life tremendously about the indigenous peoples that have inherited this property here for possibly up to 10,000 years. And so there's no history. I know of this because there is a person who came forward to me and says, do you know about the burial ground where the development is going right now over in the area of I don't know the name of the development, but it's over by the old hospital by DEQ. In that area, there was a burial ground apparently, which the lady says because she has a youngster who grew up here and she's well into her 80s, used to play in that area and in the burial ground. You got to be kidding. And I just found out about this. And I said, wow. And so I do know as a youngster that arrowheads and other kinds of artifacts, First Nation artifacts were found down at the mouth of the Milton Creek. It dumps into the slough in that area. There's a bridge there now. And it's in that area. It's actually the dig happened where the trestle goes across Milton Creek. And there were archaeologists there and they did a massive dig and found many products which ended up in the museum in Portland. I'm not certain which museum they ended up, but anyway, they're safeguarded in that sense. So this is important. So what brought this to mind is the canoe. And the canoe, I think, is something that we should hold as something very sacred to what is happening. It was carved by Native Americans, and it was carved right out here during the Lewis and Clark ceremony. So we talked about, okay, should it be on display? Or should it be kind of an item that kids can play on, whatever? I would hate to see something like that destroyed. I'd rather see it admired and in its condition. I'd like to see it under either plexiglass or some kind of homage to what we have for our indigenous people in the area. So it's the one thing we have. We've covered up a lot of burial sites. We've destroyed them in our developments, which a lot of people think that we have. And I think a statement of respect to the First Nation peoples is in order. And I would like to see some of that happening on a riverfront development as we go forward there. Anyway, off my chest.
Adding to that, I've heard from some other people who are interested in the indigenous people that Nob Hill used to be one of the major lookouts because it brought the inflow of the Columbia, the Lewis River, and most of the channel. It was quite a meeting place for the tribes of the Columbia. So I think we have some stuff down here that are equally important. The burial grounds out of town.
Yeah, well, the Chinook Nation was huge on the Columbia River. It extended from Sophie Island all the way down to Astoria.
Yeah, so definitely should be
The Riverwalk project has an interpretive signage element already baked in. And spaces to tell our story. Tell our history and all of this matter.
It would be
easily achieved through this.
Yeah,
element of
it would be my desire to see the canoe there and in a proper mode of display. I'd like to see that. Anyway, my 2 bits. And would like to let's see. Jessica kind of opened the meeting, but I'd like, so who would like to motion for adjournment?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Did I hear a second? It's been motioned and seconded that we adjourn. There's going to be no votes.